Hello my dear students, welcome to Teacher at Home. Today class we are going to learn the 7th chapter Regional Aspirations, Region and the Nation. 1980s may be seen as a period of rising regional aspirations for autonomy, often outside the framework of the Indian Union. These movements frequently involved armed assertions by the people, their repression by the government, and a collapse of the political and electoral processes. It is also not surprising that most of these struggles were long drawn and concluded in negotiated settlements or accords between the central government and the groups leading the movement for autonomy. The accords were reached after a process of dialogue that aimed to settle contentious issues within the constitutional framework. And the journey to the accord was always tumultuous and often violent. Indian approach in studying In studying the Indian constitution and the process of nation building, we have repeatedly come across one basic principle of the Indian approach to diversity. The Indian nation shall not deny the rights of different regions, linguistic groups to retain their own culture. We decided to live a united social life without losing the distinctiveness of the numerous cultures that constitute it. Indian nationalism sought to balance the principles of unity and diversity. The nation would not mean the negotiations of the region. In this sense, the Indian approach was very different from the one adopted in many European countries where they saw cultural diversity as a threat to the nation. India adopted a democratic approach to the question of diversity. Democracy allows the political expressions of regional aspirations and does not look upon them as anti national. Besides, democratic politics allows parties and groups to address the people on the basis of their regional identity, aspiration, and specific regional problems. Thus, in the course of democratic politics, regional aspirations get strengthened. At the same time, democratic politics also means that regional issues and problems will receive adequate attention, accommodation in the policy making process. Such an arrangement may sometimes lead to tensions and problems. Sometimes the concern for national unity may overshadow the regional needs and aspirations. At other times, a concern for region alone may blind us to the larger needs of the nation. Therefore, political conflicts over issues of power of the regions, their rights and their separate existence are common to nations that want to respect diversity while trying to forge and retain unity. Areas of tension. In the first chapter, you have seen how immediately after independence, our nation had to cope with many difficult issues like partition, displacement, integration of princely states, reorganization of states, and so on. Many observers, both within the country and from outside, had predicted that India as one unified country cannot last long. Soon after independence, the issue of Jammu and Kashmir came up. It was not only a conflict between India and Pakistan. More than that, it was a question of the political aspirations of the people of Kashmir Valley. Similarly, in some parts of the northeast, there was no consensus about being a part of India. First, Nagaland and then Mizoram witnessed strong movements demanding separations from India. In the south, some groups from the Dravid movement briefly toyed with that idea of the separate country. These events were followed by mass agitations in many parts of the formation of linguistic states. Today, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Gujarat were among the regions affected by the agitations. In some parts of the northern India, particularly in Tamil Nadu, there were protests against making, making Hindi the official national language of the country. In the north, there were strong pro Hindi agitations demanding that Hindi be made the official language immediately from the late 1950s. People speaking the Punjabi language started agitating for a separate state for themselves. This demand was finally accepted and state of Punjab and Haryana were created in 1966. Later, the states of Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand and Jharkhand were created. Thus, the challenge of diversity was met by redrawing the internal boundaries of the country. Yet this did not lead to resolution of all problems and for all times. In some regions, like Kashmir and Nagaland, the challenge was so complex that it could not be resolved in the first phase of nation building. Besides, new challenges came up in states like Punjab, Assam, and Mizoram. Let us study these cases in some detail. In this process, let us also go back to some of the earlier instances of difficulties of nation building. The success and failures in these cases are instructive not merely for a study of our past but also for an understanding of India's future. Jammu and Kashmir. As you have studied in the previous year, Jammu and Kashmir had a special status under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. However, in spite of it, Jammu and Kashmir experienced violence, cross border terrorism, and political instability with internal and external ramifications. It also resulted in the loss of many lives, including that of innocent civilians, security personnel, and militants. Besides, there was also a large-scale displacement of Kashmiri Pandits from the Kashmir Valley. Jammu and Kashmir comprises three social and political regions: Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh. Jammu region is a mix of foothills and plains. It is predominantly inhabited by the Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and the people of other denominations also reside in this region. The Kashmir region mainly comprises of the Kashmir Valley. It is inhabited mostly by Kashmiri Muslims, with the remaining being Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, and others. The Ladakh region is mainly mountainous. It has very little population, which is almost equally divided among Buddhists and Muslims. Roots of the problem. Before 1947, Jammu and Kashmir was a princely state. Its ruler Maharaja Hari Singh did not want to merge either with India or Pakistan, but to have independent status of the state. The Pakistani leaders thought that Kashmir region belonged to Pakistan since the majority of population of the state was Muslim. But this is not how the people of the state themselves saw it. They thought to themselves, the Kashmir is all about. The issue of regional aspirations is known as Kashmiriyat. The popular movement in the state, led by Sheikh Abdullah of the National Conference, wanted to get rid of the Maharaja but was against joining Pakistan. The National Conference was a secular organization and a long association with the Congress. Sheikh Abdullah was a personal friend of some of the leading nationalist leaders, including Nehru. Dravidian movement. That is வடக்கு வழிகிறது தெற்கு தெரிகிறது. The North thrives even as the such decades. The popular slogans slums up the dominant sentiments of one of the India's most effective regional movements, the Dravidian movement. At one point of time, this was one of the first regional movements in Indian politics, though some sections of this movement had ambitions of creating a Dravidam nation. The movement did not take to arms. It used democratic means like public debates and the electoral platform to achieve its ends. This tragedy paid off as the movement acquired political power in the state and also became influential at the national level. Dravidian movement led to the formation of the Dravida Kazhagam under the leadership of Tamil social reformer E.V. Ramaswamy Periyar. Organization strongly opposed the Brahmins' dominance and affirmed regional pride against the political, economic, and cultural domination of the North. Initially, the Dravidian movement spoke in terms of the whole of South India. However, lack of support from the other state limited the movement of Tamil Nadu. The DK split and the political legacy of the movement was transferred to Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam. The DMK made the entry into politics with a pronged agitation in 1953 to 54. First, it demanded the restoration of the original name of the Kalikudi railway station, which had been renamed Dalmaipuram after an industrial house from the north. This demand brought out the opposition to the North Indian economic and cultural symbols. Second agitation was for giving Tamil cultural history of greater importance in social school curricula. The third agitation was against the craft education scheme of the state government, which alleged was linked to the Brahminical social outlook. It also agitated against making Hindu the country's official language. The success of the anti Hindi agitations of 1965 added to the DMK's popularity. Sustained political agitations brought in the DMK to power the assembly elections in 1967, since the Dravidian parties have dominated the politics of Tamil Nadu. Though the DMK split after the death of the leader C. Annadurai, the influence of Dravidian parties in Tamil politics actually increased. After the split of the two parties, the DMK and All India Anna DMK that claimed Dravidian legacy. Both these parties have dominated politics in Tamil Nadu for the last 4 decades. Since 1996, one of the parties have been part of the ruling coalitions at the center. 1990s, many of the parties have merged. These include Marumalarchi Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, Patel Makkal Kashchi PMK, and Deshiya Murpagu Dravida Kazhagam. All these parties have kept alive in the issues of regional pride in the politics of Tamil Nadu. Initially, see a threat of Indian nationalism. Regional politics in Tamil Nadu is a good example of the compatibility of regionalism and nationalism. In October 1947, Pakistani sent tribal infiltrate from his side to capture Kashmir. This forced the Maharaja to ask for Indian military help. India extended the military support and drew back to the infiltrators from Kashmir Valley, but only after the Maharaja had signed an instrument of accessions with the government of India. However, Pakistan continued to control a sizable part of the state. The issue was taken to the United Nations Organization, which in resolution dated 21st April 1948 recommended a three-step process to resolve the issue. Firstly, Pakistan had to withdraw its entire nationalities who entered into Kashmir. Secondly, India needed to progressively reduce its forces so as to maintain law and order. Thirdly, a plebiscite was to conduct in a free and impartial manner. However, no progress could be achieved under the resolution. In the meanwhile, Sheikh Abdullah took over the Prime Minister of the state Jammu and Kashmir in March 1948, while India agreed to grant it provisional autonomy under the Article 370. The head of the government in the state was then called Prime Minister. External and internal disputes. Since the politics of Jammu and Kashmir remain controversial and conflict-ridden, both for external and internal reasons, externally Pakistan has always claimed that Kashmir Valley should be part of Pakistan. As we noted above, Pakistan sponsored a tribal invasion of the state in 1947, as a consequence of which one part of the state came under Pakistani control. India claims that this area is under illegal occupation. Pakistan described this area as Azad Pakistan. Ever since 1947, Kashmir had remained a major issue of conflict between India and Pakistan. Internally, there is a dispute about the status of the Kashmir within Indian Union. We have studied about the special provisions under Article 370, 371 last year in Indian Constitution work. The special status has provoked two opposite reactions. There is a sections of the people outside Jammu and Kashmir that believed that the special status of the state conferred by Article 370 did not allow full integration of the state with India. The session felt that Article 370 be revoked and Jammu and Kashmir be treated like any other state of India. Another session, mostly Kashmiris, believe that the autonomy conferred by Article 370 is not enough. They had at least three major grievances. First, a promise that accessions would be referred to the people of the state after the situation created by the tribal invasion was normalized has not been fulfilled. This generated the idea for the plebiscite. Secondly, it was the feeling that the special federal status guaranteed by Article 370 had been eroded in practice. This had led to the demand for restoration of autonomy or greater state autonomy. Thirdly, it was felt that democracy, which is practiced in the rest of India, has not been similarly institutionalized in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Politics since 1948. After taking over as the Prime Minister, Sheikh Abdullah initiated major land reforms and other policies which benefited ordinary people. But there was a growing difference between him and the central government about the position of Kashmir's status. He was dismissed in 1953 and kept in detention for a number of years. The leadership that succeeded him did not enjoy as much as popular support and was not able to rule the state, mainly due to the support of the center. There were serious allegations of malpractices and rigging in various elections. During most of the period between 1953 and 1974, the Congress Party exercised influence on the politics in the state. A terminated national conference, when Sheikh Abdullah remained in power with the active support of Congress for some time, but later it merged with the Congress. Thus, the Congress gained direct control over the government in the state and brought about the changes. In the meanwhile, there were several attempts to reach an agreement between Sheikh Abdullah and the government of India. A change of provisions of the constitution of Jammu and Kashmir was made in 1965, by which the Prime Minister of the state was designed as Chief Minister of the state. Accordingly, Ghulam Muhammad Sadiq of the Indian National Congress became the first Chief Minister of the state. In 1974, Indira Gandhi reached an agreement with Sheikh Abdullah and he became the Chief Minister of the state. He revived the National Conference, which was elected with majority in the assembly elections held in 1977. Sheikh Abdullah died in 1982 and the leadership of the Indian National Conference went to his son Farooq Abdullah, who became the Chief Minister. But he soon was dismissed by the governor and the breakaway faction of the National Conference came to power for a brief period. The dismissal of Farooq Abdullah's government due to the intervention of the center generated a feeling of resentment in Kashmir. Confidence that Kashmiris had developed in the democratic processes after the accord between Indira Gandhi and Sheikh Abdullah received a setback. The feeling that the center was intervening in the politics of the state was further strengthened with the National Congress in 1986 agreed to have an electoral alliance with the Congress, the ruling party of the center. Insurgency and after. It was in the environment that in the 1987 Assembly election took place. The official result shows a massive victory of the National Conference. Congress alliance of Farooq Abdullah returned to the Chief Minister. It was widely received, believed that the results did not reflect popular choice and the entire election process was rigged. A popular resentment had already been brewing in the state against the efficient administration since early 1980s. This was now augmented by the commonly prevailing feeling that democratic processes was being undermined by the state at the behest of the center. This generated a political crisis in Kashmir, which became severe with the rise of insurgency. By 1989, the state had come to the grip of militant movement mobilized around the cause of the separate Kashmiri nation. The insurgents got moral, material, and military support from Pakistan. For a number of years of the state was under president's rule, effectively under the control of the armed forces. Throughout the period from 1990, Jammu and Kashmir experienced extraordinary violence at the hands of the insurgents and through army action. Assembly elections in the state were held only in 1996, in which the National Conference led by Farooq Abdullah came to power with the demand of regional autonomy for Jammu and Kashmir. At the end of its term, elections were held in the state of 2002. The National Conference failed to win a majority and was replaced by the coalition government of People's Democratic Party and Congress. 2002 and beyond. As per the coalition agreement, Mufti Muhammad headed the government for the last 3 years, succeeded by Ghulam Nabi Azad of the Indian National Congress, who, however, could not complete the term as president rule, was imposed in the state in July 2008. The next election was held in November-December 2008. Another coalition government came into power headed by Omar Abdullah in 2009. However, the state continued to witness disturbances led by the Hurriyat Conference. In 2014, the state went to another election, which recorded the highest voters turnout in 25 years. Consequently, the coalition government led by Mufti Muhammad Said of the PDP came into power with BJP as its partner. After Mufti Muhammad Said died, the daughter Mahbooba Mufti became the first women chief minister of the state in April 2016. During the tenure of Mahbooba Mufti, major acts of terrorism, mounting external and internal tensions were witnessed. The president rule was imposed in June 2018 after BJP withdrew its support to the Mufti government. On 5th August 2019, Article 370 was abolished by the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019 and the state was constituted into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are living examples of plural society in India. Not only are the diversities of all kinds religious, cultural, linguistic, ethnic and tribal, but there are also divergent political and development aspirations which have been sought to be achieved by the latest act. Punjab. The decade of 1980s also witnessed major developments in the state of Punjab. Social composition of the state changed first with partition and later on after the carving out of Haryana and Himachal Pradesh. While the rest of the country was reorganized on linguistic lines in 1950s, Punjab had to wait till 1966 for the creation of a Punjabi-speaking state. The Akali Dal, which was formed in 1920 as the political wing of the Sikhs, had led to the movement of the formation of Punjabi Suba. The Sikhs were now a majority in the truncated state of Punjab. Political contest. After the reorganization, Akalis came to power in 1967 and then in 1977. On both occasions, it was a coalition government. Akalis discovered that despite the redrawing of the boundaries, their political position remained precarious. Firstly, their government was dismissed by the centre midway through its term. Secondly, they did not enjoy strong support among the Hindus. Thirdly, the Sikh community, like all other religious communities, was internally differentiated on caste and class lines. The Congress get more support among the Dalits, whether Hindu or Sikh, than the Alkalis. It was in the contest that during the 1970s, a section of Alkalis began to demand political autonomy for the region. This was reflected by the resolution passed at the conference at Anandpur Sahib in 1973. Anandpur Sahib resolution asserted regional autonomy and wanted to redefine state-center relationship in the country. Resolution also spoke of the aspirations of the Sikh Qawm and declared its goal as attaining the Bolbala of the Sikhs. A resolution was a plea of strengthening federalism in India. A resolution had a limited appeal among the Sikh masses. A few years later, after the Akali government had been dismissed in 1980, Kali Dal launched a movement on the question of the distribution of water between the Punjab and its neighboring states. A session of the religious leaders raised the question of autonomous Sikh identity. Cycle of violence. Soon the leadership of the movement passed from the moderate Akalis to the extremist elements and took the form of armed insurgency. The militants made their headquarters inside the Sikh holy shrine, the Golden Temple in Amritsar, and turned into an armed fortress. In June 1984, the Government of India carried out Operation Blue Star, codename for army action in the Golden Temple. In this operation, the government could successfully flush out the militants, but it also damaged the historic temple and deeply hurt the settlements of the Sikhs. Large proportion of the Sikhs in India and abroad saw the military operation as an attack of the faith, and this gave further impetus to militant and extremist group. Still more tragic turn of events complicated the Punjab problem further. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated on 31st October 1984 outside her residence by her bodyguards. Both the assassins were Sikhs and wanted to take revenge for Operation Blue Star. While the entire country was shocked by this development, in Delhi and in many parts of the northern India, violence broke out against the Sikh community. The violence against the Sikh continued for almost a week. More than 2,000 Sikhs were killed in the national capital, the area worst affected by the violence. Hundreds of Sikhs were killed in other parts of the country, especially in places like Kanpur, Bokaro, and Chas. Many Sikh families lost their male members and thus suffered great emotional and heavy financial loss. What hurt the Sikhs most was that the government took a long time in restoring normalcy and that the perpetrators of the violence were not effectively punished. 20 years later, speaking in the parliament in 2005, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh expressed regret over these killings and apologized to the nation for the anti-Sikh violence. Road to Peace. After coming to power, following the election in 1984, the new Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi initiated a dialogue with moderate Akali leaders. In July 1985, he reached an agreement with the Harchand Sikh Lonowal and the presidents of the Akali Dal. This agreement, known as the Rajiv Gandhi Longowal Accord to the Punjab Accord, was a step towards bringing normalcy to Punjab. It was agreed that Chandigarh would be transferred to Punjab, a separate commission would be appointed to resolve the border dispute between Punjab and Haryana, and a tribunal would be set up to decide the sharing of Ravi Bias river water among Punjab, Haryana, and Rajasthan. Agreement also provided for compensation to and better treatment of those affected by the militancy in Punjab and the withdrawal of the application of Armed Forces Special Powers Act in Punjab. However, peace did not come easily or immediately. The cycle of violence continued nearly for a decade. Militancy and the counter insurgency violence lead to excesses by the police and violation of human rights. Politically, it led to fragmentation of the Akali Dal. A central government had to impose president's rule in the state, and the normal electoral and political process was suspended. It was not easy to restore the political process in the atmosphere of suspicion and violence. When elections were held in Punjab in 1992, only 24% of the electors turned out to vote. Militancy was eventually eradicated by the security forces, but the losses incurred by the people of Punjab, Sikh, and Hindus alike were enormous. Peace turned to Punjab by the middle of 1990s. Alliance of Akali Dal, Badal, and the BJP scored a major victory in 1997. In the first normal elections in the state in the post militancy era, the state is once again preoccupied with questions of economic development and social change. Though religious identities continue to be important for the people, politics has gradually moved back along secular lines. The Northeast. In the Northeast, regional aspirations reached a turning point in 1980s. The region now consists of 7 states, also referred to as the Seven Sisters. The region has only 4% of the country's population, but about twice as much share of its area. A small corridor of about 22 kilometers connects the region to the rest of the country. Otherwise, the region shares boundaries with China, Myanmar, and Bangladesh and serves as India's gateway to Southeast Asia. The region has witnessed a lot of change since 1947. Tripura, Manipur, and Khasi Hills of Meghalaya were erstwhile princely states which merged with India after independence. Entire region of Northeast has undergone considerable political reorganization. Nagaland state was created in 1963, Manipur, Tripura, and Meghalaya in 1972, while Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh became separate states only in 1987. The partition of India in 1947 had reduced the Northeast to a landlocked region and affected its economy. Cut off from the rest of India, the region suffered neglect in developmental terms. In politics, too remained insulated. At the same time, most states in this region underwent major demographic changes due to the influx of migrants from neighboring states and countries. The isolation of the region, its complex social character, and its backwardness compared to other parts of the country have all resulted in the complicated set of demands from the different states of the Northeast. The vast international border and weak communication between the Northeast and the rest of India have further added to the delicate nature of politics there. Three issues dominate the politics of Northeast: demands for autonomy, movements of secession, and opposition of outsiders, major initiatives of the first issue in the 1970s set the stage for some dramatic developments on the second and the third in the 1980s. Demands for autonomy. At independence, the entire region except Manipur and Tripura comprised the state of Assam. Demands for political autonomy arose when the non-Assamese felt that the Assam government was imposing Assamese language on them. There were opposition and protest riots throughout the state. Leaders of the major tribal communities wanted to separate from Assam. They formed the Eastern India Tribal Union, which later transformed into a more comprehensive all-party Hill Leaders Conference in 1960. They demanded a tribal state to be carved out of Assam. Finally, instead of one tribal state, several states got carved out of Assam. At different points of time, central government had to create Meghalaya, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh out of Assam. Tripura and Manipur were upgraded into states too. The reorganization of the Northeast was completed by 1972, but this was not the end of autonomy demands in this region. In Assam, for example, communities like the Bodos, Karbis, and Dimasas wanted separate states. They worked for this demand by mobilizing public opinion and popular movement as well as through insurgency. Often, the same area was claimed by more than one community. It was not possible to go on making smaller and at smaller states. Therefore, some other provisions of our federal setup were used to satisfy their autonomy demands while remaining in Assam, Karbis, and Dimasas have been granted autonomy under district councils, while Bodos were recently granted autonomous council. Secessionist movements. Demands for autonomy were easier to respond to. For this, involved using the various provisions in the Constitution for accommodation of diversities. It was much more difficult when some groups demanded a separate country, not in momentary anger, but constantly as a principled position. Country's leadership faced this problem for a in the least long time in at least two states in the Northeast. Comparison of these two cases offer us a lesson in democratic politics. After independence, the Mizo Hills area was made an autonomous district within Assam. Some Mizos believed that they were never a part of British India, therefore did not belong to the Indian Union. But the movement for secession gained popular support after the Assam government failed to respond adequately to greet famine of 1957 in Mizo Hills. The Mizo's anger led to the formation of the Mizo National Front under the leadership of Lal Danga. 1966, the MNF started an armed campaign for independence that started a 2-decade-long battle between Mizo insurgents and the Indian Army. The MNF fought a guerrilla war, got support from the Pakistani government, secured shelter in then East Pakistan. The Indian security forces countered it with a series of repressive measures of which the common people were the victims. At one point, even air force was used. These measures caused more anger and alienation among the people. At the end of 2 decades of insurgency, everyone was a loser. This is what where maturity of the political leadership at both ends made a difference. Lal Danga came back from the exile in Pakistan and started negotiations with the Indian government. Rajiv Gandhi steered these negotiations to a positive conclusion. In 1986, a peace agreement was signed between Rajiv Gandhi and Lal Danga. As per this accord, Mizoram was granted full-fledged statehood with special powers and the MNF agreed to give up secessionist struggle. Lal Danga took over as the chief minister. This accord proved a turning point in the history of Mizoram. Today, Mizoram is one of the most peaceful places in the region and has taken big strides in literacy and development. The story of Nagaland is similar to Mizoram, except that it started much earlier and has not yet had much such a happy ending. Led by Angami Safu Bizo, a section of the Nagas declared independence from India way back in 1951. Bizo turned down many offers of negotiated settlement. The Naga National Council launched an armed struggle for a sovereignty of Nagas. After a period of violent insurgency, a section of the Nagas signed an agreement with the government of India. But this was not acceptable to other rebels. The problem in Nagaland still awaits a final resolution. Movements against outsiders. The large-scale migration into northeast gave rise to a special kind of problem that pitted the local communities against people who were seen as outsiders or migrants. These latecomers, either from India or abroad, are seen as encroachers on scarce resources like land and potential competitors to employment opportunities and political power. This issue has taken political and sometimes violent form in many states of the Northeast. Assam movement from 1979 to 1985 is the best example of such movements against outsiders. Assam is suspected that there were huge numbers of illegal Bengali Muslim settlers from Bangladesh. They felt that unless the foreign nationals are detected and deported, they would reduce the indigenous Assamese into a minority. There were other economic issues too. There were widespread poverty and unemployment in Assam existence of despite the existence of natural resources like oil, tea, and coal. It was felt that these were drained out of the state without any commensurate benefit to the people. In 1979, the All Indian Students' Union, a students group not affiliated to any party, led an anti foreigner movement. The movement was against illegal migrations, against domination of Bengalis and other outsiders, and against faulty voters register that included the names of lakhs of immigrants. The movement demanded that all the outsiders who had entered the state after 1951 should be sent back. The agitation followed many novel methods and mobilized all sections of Assamese people, drawing support across the state. It also involved many tragic and violent incidents leading to loss of property and human lives. The movement also tried to blockade the movement of trains and the supply of oil from Assam to refineries in Bihar. Eventually, after 6 years of turmoil, the Rajiv Gandhi led government entered into negotiations with the AASU leaders, leading to the sign of an accord in 1985. According to this agreement, the foreigners who migrated into Assam during and after Bangladesh war and since were to be identified and deported with the successful completion of the movement. AASU and the Assam Gana Sangra Parishad organized themselves as a regional political party called Assam Gana Parishad. It came to power in 1985 with the promise of resolving the foreign national problem as well as to build a golden Assam. Assam Accord brought peace and changed the face of politics in Assam, but it did not solve the problem of immigration. Issue of the outsiders continues to be a live issue in the politics of Assam and many other places in the northeast. This problem is particularly acute, for example, in Tripura, as the original inhabitants have been reduced to being a minority in their own land. The same feeling informs the hostility of the local population to Changa refugees in Mizoram and Arunachal Pradesh. Sikkim's merger. At the time of independence, Sikkim was a protectorate of India. It meant that while it was not a part of India, it was also not a fully sovereign country. Sikkim's defense and foreign relations were looked after by India, while the power of internal administration was the Chogyal Sikkim's monarch. This agreement ran into difficulty as the Chogyal was unable to deal with the democratic aspirations of the people. An overwhelming majority of Sikkim's population was Bengali, but the Chogyal was seen as perpetuating the rule of a small elite from the minority Lepcha Bhutia community. And the Chogyal leaders to both the communities sought and got support from the government of India. The first democratic elections to Sikkim Assembly in 1974 were swept by Sikkim Congress, who stood for greater integration with India. Assembly first sought the status of associate state and then in April 1975 passed a resolution asking for the full integration with India. This was followed by a hurriedly organized referendum put a stamp of popular approval on the Assembly's request. Indian Parliament accepted this request immediately and Sikkim became the 22nd state of Indian Union. Chogyal did not accept this merger and his supporters accused the government of India of foul play and the use of force. Yet the merger enjoyed popular support and did not become a divisive issue in Sikkim's politics. Accommodation and national integration. These cases have shown us that ever after 6 decades of independence, some of the issues of national integration are not fully resolved. We have seen the regional aspiration ranging from demands of statehood and economic development, of autonomy and separation keep coming up. The period since 1980 accentuated these tensions and tested the capacity of democratic politics to accommodate the demands of diverse sections of the society. What lessons can we draw from these examples? First, and the most elementary lesson, is the regional aspirations are very much a part of the democratic politics. Expression of regional issues is not an aberration or an abnormal phenomena. Even in smaller countries like the United Kingdom, there were regional aspirations in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Spain faces secessionist movement from the Basakis and so does Sri Lanka from the Tamils. A large and diverse democracy like India must deal with the regional aspirations on a regular basis. Nation building is an ongoing process. The second lesson is that the best way to respond to regional aspirations is through democratic negotiations rather than through suppressions. Look at the situation in the 80s militancy had erupted in Punjab. Problems were persisting in the northeast. Students in Assam were agitating. Kashmir value was one of the boil. Instead of treating this as a simple law and order problems, the government of India reached negotiated settlement with regional movements. This produced a reconciliation which reduced the tensions existing in many regions. The example of Mizoram shows how political settlements can resolve the problem of separation separatism effectively. The third lesson is about the significance of power sharing. It is not significant to have a formal democratic structure. Besides that, groups and parties from the region need not be given share in power at the state level. Similarly, it is not sufficient to say that a state of the regions have autonomy in the matters. The regions together to form the nation. So the regions must have a share in deciding the destiny of the nation. If regions are not given a share in the national level decision making, the feeling of injustice, alienation can spread. The fourth lesson is that the regional imbalance in economic development contribute to the feeling of regional discrimination. Regional imbalance is a fact of India's development experience. Naturally, the backward states or backward regions in some states feel that the backwardness should be addressed on priority basis and the politics of the Indian government have caused the imbalance. If some states remain poor and others develop rapidly, it leads to regional imbalances and inter-regional migrations. Finally, this cases makes us appreciate the far-sightedness of the makers of our constitution in dealing with questions of diversity. The federal system adopted by India is a flexible agreement arrangement. While most of the states have equal powers, there are special provisions for some states like Jammu and Kashmir and the states in the northeast. The sixth schedule of the constitution allows different tribes complete autonomy of the preserving these practices and customary laws. These provisions proved crucial in resolving some very complex political problems in the Northeast. What distinguishes India from many other countries that face similar challenges is the constitutional framework in India is much more flexible and accommodative. Therefore, the regional aspirations are not encouraged to espouse separatism. Thus, politics in India has succeeded in accepting religionism as part and parcel of democratic politics. Goa's liberation. Although the British Empire in India came to an end in 1947, Portugal refused to withdraw from the territories of Goa, Diu and Daman, which were under the colonial rule since the 16th century. During their long rule, Portuguese oppressed the people of Goa, denying them civil rights, and it carried out forced religious conversions. After India's independence, the Indian government tried very patently to persuade its Portuguese government to withdraw. This was also a strong popular movement with Goa for freedom. They were strengthened by socialist satyagrahis from Maharashtra. Finally, in December 1961, the government of India sent the army which liberated these territories after barely 2 days of action. Goa, Diu and Daman became Union territory. After complication arose soon, led by the Maharashtrawadi Gomanatak Party (MGB), one section decided that Goa as a Marathi-speaking area should merge with Maharashtra. However, many Goans were keen to retain a separate Goan identity and culture, particularly the Konkani language. They were led by the United Goan Party. In January 1967, the central government had a special opinion poll in Goa asking the people to decide if they had wanted to part of the Maharashtra to remain separate. A referendum-like procedure was used to ascertain people's wishes on the issues. Majority voted in favor of remaining outside in Maharashtra. Thus, Goa continued as a union territory. Finally, in 1987, Goa became a state of the Indian Union. Then, so that's all about this chapter. If you are interested, please do like, share, and subscribe my channel. Okay, thank you.